Well, we know on a daily basis that it's been tough for individuals to sort of live in the state's economic conditions. You know, municipalities are paying a price too. We're going to take a look at that with a guy in the middle of it all, the mayor of Palos Hills, Gerald Bennett, right now on Political Update. And welcome to Political Update. I'm Paul Lisnick. Joining me for this show is the, well, I don't know what title to use. I'll start with the mayor of Palos Hills, Gerald Bennett. Jerry, it's good to see you. But I am going to use some of your other titles because it's relevant to what we're doing today. You are the former chair of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. You are also the former chair of the Illinois Municipal League. Those are important because while it's former, you just served, you're still on the executive boards. Yes. You're also chair of the Southwest Conference of Mayors, and you are the chair of the Southwest Central Dispatch, which is a fire and police dispatch entity, and you're also the chair of CMAP, yes, which is the planning organization for the future of Chicago. So.
All great groups.
All great groups. You're involved in the Olympics, so we're talking about lots of stuff, okay? Let's start with Springfield. I know you were recently during this term down in Springfield in your role of mayor, and one of the reasons it brought you down, as it brought many mayors down, is because Springfield said things are tough, so guess what, municipalities? You're going to take a hit. You're not getting that share of state income tax that you have always relied on. Talk about that.
Incredibly, with everything that's going on down there, instead of looking at the budget, trying to balance their budget, what they're looking at is other funds to raid to balance that budget. And one of them was the state local income tax share. You know, back in the late 60s, when the state formed the income tax or made it a permanent situation, the local governments were to receive a portion of it. They said, we'll collect it for you and then give it to you. Well, you know, that's worked out over the years, but now the governor had recently proposed to take 30% of that share and keep it for themselves to balance the budget. It would be devastating to local budgets, devastating.
And that's true not only, and when we say local budgets, I mean, that also includes the city of Chicago, because Mayor Daley spoke out about this. Some municipalities smaller than Chicago, I mean, this is, and maybe even Chicago, this is crippling.
Sure, it is. I mean, there's only certain revenues, especially towns that don't have large sales tax bases, that have certain revenue sharings that take place with the state, and that's one of them, and it's a critical one, and one that we've always counted on. And in fact, with the recent census to be completed this year, will determine, you know, how much we receive, whether your population went up or down. It's based upon a percentile of that population. The money's come back to local government.
So, did they listen with open ears?
Well, I think the message got through with enough mayors going down there, which we'll get into some discussion about the importance of mayors speaking in one voice down in Springfield. That the message get back to us from the General Assembly that it was going to be an untouchable. We'll see.
What was untouchable? That they would undo it?
They would not do, you know, go along with the governor's recommendation of 30% out of our local revenue share costs.
But of course, we live in a world of compromise, yes, so maybe they wouldn't do that. So do you have fears that it could be 20%? And is there some percentage you could live with?
You know, as far as the percentiles are concerned, actually over that period of time, that has been marginalized a little bit. It was reduced slightly, and we had a great fight over prior governors over that. As far as living with a little less, you know, we can all live with a little less, but I think what's happened here is the state being practical in balancing their budget, again, is looking to other funds other than what they need to do internally in balancing their budget, meaning cutting expenses and you know, looking at raising revenues themselves. So we have to do it locally, and we do it.
And I want to talk about Springfield, but for example, in Palos Hills, that's your home base. So what do you do? If you do lose, you know, you have that cut, what do you do to balance?
Well, the crazy thing about politics in Springfield are state statutes that affect local government. A lot of people don't understand. You have home rule communities, which are communities above the population of 25,000, or if a community votes itself into home rule, which is a majority of its local residents, we're limited to the type of things that we can do to raise revenue. We're a home rule or a non-home rule community, so if they cut state income tax, we can't go and raise local property taxes because it takes a referendum to do that.
Which a home rule community can.
Right, right. We're capped. It's called a PTEL. All non-home rule communities cannot raise their local property taxes because of state statute. And so we would be limited to not using that as another resource. And again, with being not depending on retail sales tax, we're pretty limited to what we can seek out there in revenues.
So could Springfield address, say, non-home rule communities? We're going to have a certain provision. We're going to deal with home rule because they have other mechanisms they can use, but we realize that places like Palos Hills can't do that. Can they do that, or is it an all or nothing kind of approach they have to take?
It's almost like a cake and eat it too. I mean, on one end, you'll send mandates down to local governments that we have to pay for things that they pass laws on. Pension, we'll get into that. On the other hand, they say, well, you can't raise taxes either. So what's a municipality to do? You know, we can reduce our budgets to reduce services to nothing if that's the choice. And if that's going to be the choice, then that's the choice we may have to take.
Yeah.
Over the last year and a half, local governments have taken an initiative of seeing this economy going down the tubes the way it was and made the tough choices of cutting services, cutting back on personnel, furloughs, layoffs, not rehiring. Believe me, we go through those budgets line item by line item. We know exactly what's being spent, and we had to par back, expecting that the worst, and it did come. But what we're facing now are mandates coming out of Springfield that we don't have control over. That's going to force us into even greater cuts in services because of loss of income.
Most people recognize that if you want something in Springfield, you better be talking to the speaker, you better be talking to the leadership. So when you're down in Springfield, along with your colleague mayors, are you literally hitting, let's hit the state reps and let's hit these senators' offices, or is it all about trying to sit down with Mike Madigan and John Cullerton and Christine Radogno and Tom Cross?
I know them all. Been in politics for 30 years as mayor. I know them all. They're good people, and I know they're trying to do their best with what they can do. But it's changed. It's certainly changed over the last 10 years. I think so. Our approach to our local reps and our state senators was to be on a one-on-one basis. We both represent the same people. We should both understand the same issues. And that's the disconnect, I think, that's taken place over the last 10 years, is that there is a stronger power base that's grown down in Springfield and a greater disconnect from local government. Again, we represent the same people. We shouldn't have to go down there as lobbyists. We should be going down there as partners and trying to make government better for our residents that we represent. I think it's more difficult now to approach our state reps or state senators on a one-on-one issue without the signal being given from leadership as to how that bill's going to go or not.
And they're really, let's be honest, they're powerless unless they have that signal.
Yeah. And I guess I keep asking the question, and again, I've been around for a long time. I work with mayors throughout the entire state. What is the purpose of power? You can, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you can have all the power in the world. What are you going to do with it? What's the purpose of being in government in attaining that power, which in the past, hell, if I had power, I could get some things done. This has become a power of going nowhere with it. And again, we're seeing it in Springfield and Washington. If one's in and one's out, then nothing gets done. So the game continues, and I think that's the thing that has upset, certainly people in my community and across this nation is, where is this all going?
Well, as you say, you've been mayor for 30 years, so I'm guessing in some municipalities, everybody says, let's change, let's throw the bums out and all this kind of stuff. Of course, very little does change. But because you've been around a long time, do your constituents essentially say, we get it, Jerry, it's not you, you're doing what you can? Yeah,
the question comes up with having term limits, but, I never believed in that because I truly believe in how our Constitution was set up. You run for office, you base it on your qualifications, you get to the voters, they say, hey, I like that guy, I'm going to put him in. 4 years later, they have the right to come back to you and say, you know what, you didn't do a good job, and you're out the door. Now, that said, look what's taken place just in the last primary. 25% of the population came out. With all the clamoring that's going on across this nation, in the metro area, 25% of the population came out to vote somebody in or out. So it still lies in the voters' hands as to how they choose their elected officials.
But they have to opt to choose to step out to the voting booth. Okay, you mentioned pension reform. That is a critical issue, but I want to wait till we come back after these words to talk about pension reform. It's unbelievable. Stay with us.